Boom, start recording. Okay, I think we can start. I assume that today will be quite not so long workshop because apparently it's not very different element or elements to comp, and also we didn't have too many participants, so not too many examples. But let's see, maybe now we'll kind of like have ideas and stuff. How I want to structure this hour or half an hour today. It's basically and from other side of the world, Aitor, welcome. I guys just admit. I think you all can admit. So let them join. So what we will do, basically in beginning, I would like to go through very basics of what kind of smoke elements are, and I'm pretty aware that it's maybe will sounds a little bit childish and like, well, of course we know all that, but I learned quite some stuff yesterday when I was putting all this together, so I think it will be quite important for us to understand what actually smoke is, or cloud, and so on and so on and so on. And then we had a few examples. We did this, or at least I tried to do a challenge of compositing of smoke elements. There was exactly two participants, me and Johan, which is already good. And we had a little example from Aitor. You also can show some examples, and we can talk about this in time that will stay kind of like will be left over after we'll have a look on examples that we did about your tips and tricks, because again, as always, like, I don't have a monopoly on how to comp certain element, and each one has certain kind of like ideas or stuff that he learned from other companies, other people, and so on and so on and so on. All right, so from your permission, let's basically let's start. So okay, so first of all, I want to come back because we'll start from smoke itself. I will go back to our previous workshop, which kind of like was fire, and as kind of like we learned back then that smoke is generated by combustion, by kind of by burning of the element, and when there is incomplete combustion, which means not what is produced in the end. I think we have it here. So where was it? Comp tips. So I will be precise. Do I save it? If not, no, I didn't find it. Okay, I don't have it here. But anyway, so where you have complete and incomplete combustion, when you have complete combustion, you just have, I think, H and O in the end. And that's what's happening in your fire in your kitchen on the left side. And when you have some element which is by burning producing completely different element, it's called incomplete combustion, and then we're getting a water, or we're getting H basically, and we're getting certain chemical element. For example, if you're burning a coal, then you're producing a smoke. If you're burning a plastic, it also will be incomplete combustion, and then we have smoke which is produced from the plastic element. Okay, meaning that smoke basically produced by different elements, and that's already kind of important for the look that we're going to get. So Wikipedia, okay, collection of airborne solid and liquid particles and gases emitted when a material undergoes combustion or pyrolysis, together with a quantity of air it's entrained or otherwise mixed into the mass. Okay, so this kind of like pretty much the same as I'm mentioning about the fire, just maybe in a little bit more complicated way. But it's will define basically what the smoke is. It's not some weird thing. It's just some particles in the air which will have different properties of different material that was burned. Okay, not something crazily new, not something that we didn't know before. But now let's have a look. I will keep it pretty short, but I did collect quite some elements of smoke, so we will just nail before we're going to comp. We'll nail basically things that's happening to the environment when we have a smoke inside of this environment. I think this picture is very good, kind of like showing what's happening there. Okay, so first of all, we see that this smoke will have some diffuse properties, okay, and some reflective properties. So we see that the smoke is largely white. I don't know what was the material. Maybe it's very cold today, and that's water, and that's evaporating. But basically, the few things that again, very simple but important stuff that we will kind of like talk about. So first of all, this smoke is reflecting a lot of light. Okay. Second, this smoke definitely scatters a lot of light inside of itself. So it has a kind of like this SSS feeling, so subsurface scattering basically. But let's say that just light, which is coming from the environment, it scatters inside of itself. Next thing, there is a self-shadowing. So smoke will cast shadow on itself, which is again one big deal to remember as a step. There is a shadow on the environment. So we can see we have light coming from the top right, and we see that we have very strong contact shadow between smoke and the ground. Okay. Additionally, smoke is reflecting the light of the environment. So if I will have a look on the upper part of the smoke, okay, it will be more kind of like brightish. I don't know. Actually, here we're starting to get the bluish tones, and I think that will be the more color of the smoke. Maybe I'm mistaken, the diffuse color of the material. But on the left side, that's very important. It's starting to be a beige, like a ground. Okay, so smoke will reflect light. Okay, and we will see this in the quite some additional examples. So that's another one. And again, very important parts of the self-shadowing, that's inside of the smoke. We're starting to get a lot of the structure, and that's why I'm talking about these basics, because there's many mistakes happening in comps when people, they just keying the smoke, checking this there, and they're saying, well, that's the smoke. Okay, and then we're like, no, it's not. It's very flat. And they're like, well, but I did key the real element. Well, the real element had self-shadowing, and this one is not. And that's things that we need to recreate in compositing when we're working on this. Now, here it's also a very good example of how reflective smoke is, how much light is reflected outside. If we will have a look on this little part, how bright this part is. So this is the only part which is hit by the sunlight, and this is one big thing of the compositing of the smoke. You need to understand, or we need to always remember, while we're looking on the element like as a 2D element, this element takes quite big space inside of the real 3D world, and this is our huge opportunity to create depths. And that's something that we always struggling when we comping shots, and we're like, well, I did put few elements, but now I need to merge all this together. Smoke is one of the smoke and dust and so on, and so atmospherics, it's one of the easiest and most effective ways to create depths and to connect all elements together, because smoke takes a lot of volume inside of your picture, and you can cover two of your CG elements, or your CG element and the real plate, by one layer of smoke with the different depths, and that will merge all this together. It's just kind of a magic, kind of like another cheap trick, let's call it. Why cheap? Because it's very easy to create, or from the moment you're doing right, of course. But anyway, here for example, we see how up front coming this light smoke, and the rest is pretty much dim, and that creates also depths in the picture. And again, let's have a look on the contact of the smoke with the ground, which is again essential part to say this smoke is on the ground, and that's reacting exactly as any other element that you will comp. And that's why I'm saying, well, this workshop is not going to be, well, smoke, some magical thing. No, it's just particles in the air, and it can be like aerosol, like liquid, or it can be like really hard particles, or like we cannot, hard material we cannot call it, but next one. So this is we're starting to get examples of the smoke again creates depths inside of the picture, and there is a there's two smokes, one of them very far away, and we did haze it here, not we, but basically that's a picture which was taken. And this haze, it's different type of kind of like different type of atmospheric effect that can happen. I guess this is just will be a, or there is some mist in the air, or this is just what's happening to due to UV when you're shooting something, oh, how we call it, UV radiation, I guess. When you're shooting something without polarizing filter, then the camera on the way, the lens on the way, or the more rays, while they're coming to the camera, they're collecting too much of the UV haze. But man, how I lost the, how it's called. Somebody help me. It's It's UV. Am I correct? Radiation.
Yeah,
I
it's
believe so, yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, good. So I'm not completely wrong. And then everything starting to be slightly bluish. But additionally, it can be collection just of different gases and mists which we kind of like accumulating from the depths. And that's how we can see that this big smoke is just in front of us, okay, and the another one is very, very far away. Really, it's pretty much on horizon. Now, fine, but now let's talk about the self-shadowing. So this smoke in front of us, it's very good example how we would like to build smokes when we creating smoke. So this smoke is extremely black. It's oil which is burning. Okay, again, when we're faking something, we need to understand what is the element. So in this case, well, if we will hear, okay, we have oil which is burning, you're not going to bring a white element of smoke and going to comp it. Okay, no, you will have to find in your library some element which is actually colored in black. Well, let's see what else we have in this smoke. So first of all, again, we see the volume. Okay, if you will just luma key your smoke from the black screen, you're not going to get this volume, this stuff. Okay, so you will have to be more inventive, and that's how you will have to build your smokes on top of each other, maybe, if you want that it will be kind of realistic. Um, then what else? We have fire here inside of black element. You see it's not very much scattering. In white smoke it will scatter a little bit more, but that's fine. Let's keep going. Again, I found this one, so it's just to kind of like again demonstrate the diffuse qualities of the different smokes. And yeah, that's quite as you can see, quite aggressive here. Another one, another kind of beautiful plume of smoke, and we can see that two different smokes, which two different materials are burning. On the background there is a black smoke, on the foreground it's a white, and both of them are quite beautiful because they have so much depth, they have so much um, um, details in them that I will have to work quite hard to achieve. Okay, so now let's go to the more kind of like usual simple ones that we basically quite frequently have to comp. Okay, so here the density of the smoke is way smaller. We see that manages to completely scatter through it. We really can see that the color of the sun, basically. We see that this smoke is kind of, it's morning. The smoke is quite orange, while the shadows here are quite bluish. Okay, so this is a very usual thing that you're going to do when you're going to comp smoke. You want to take the color of the sun and light the bright part of the smoke with the color of the sun, and then when the smoke is self-shadowing, you want to collect the color of the sky and put in the shadow part of the smoke. And have a look here. You see, this is warm, this is cold. And I can go through all examples now if we'll try to concentrate on that. That's too black, for example. But here, again, very warm, starting to be more cold. So fog, smoke will reflect a lot of light. And we will arrive to the fog in a moment. Okay, again, I'm just going through one, two, three. Another thing, what's happening with the smokes, we need to remember it's the size of the smoke and the speed. Okay, so the size. So it's similar as with any element. Depending on the size, element will react differently physically. Okay, so if we like here, we can see that well, this smoke is quite little. Okay, so we see the shapes. They're saying like, well, that's the not big smoke. You probably will be not able to sell this smoke as a smoke which is going from the chimney. Okay, because physically it's just reacting very, very differently. Okay, so that's a very much good example as will be cigarette smoke or smoke of the candle. Okay, and here we're coming also to interesting part of the kind of particles of the smoke, which is different from the physicality of the vapor from the water. So particles of the smoke, they're trying to connect to each other. I try to find simple explanation, but basically it's something like the molecules of the different elements, they kind of have some magnetism and trying to stay together. Whatever it is, it's not something that I learned and then I was comping smoke in a certain way, but it's definitely interesting to know why actually smoke is sticking together while vapor, fog, and mist are reacting slightly differently. Okay, so let's talk about the second element that we're going to touch a lot. Is basically it's all the same. So clouds is vaporized water. Fog and mist, it's basically the same element, just interesting, the definition of mist, it's different. It's not a fog, it's just more transparent fog. So basically it is a fog. Okay, just when we have a little bit less of that. Now, what is important and why is this different from smoke? Okay, so um, clouds, and we will talk about it's all clouds basically. It's just vaporized water. Okay, and it's same molecules. It's just molecules of water which just getting more space between each other, and then they becoming a vapor. Okay, why is this important? And that's something that I was kind of like, okay, so first of all, they do not stick together as much as smoke will. They're not creating this long kind of like plumes. Sometimes when you burning, I don't know, like as a child, I was burning plastic and I was able to catch smoke in the air. I remember that, like not healthy thing. Probably you shouldn't do that. But I really was feeling that I was not was I was able to take it apart, which was quite interesting. You cannot do this with fog and mist. They basically spreading apart because of the heat usually. Okay, they're starting to be faster, water becoming a cloud and going up. Now, so this is particles of the water, and usually it's like liquid or crystals, so it can be cold particles as well. But the cool thing is that it is water, and water is very reflective, and that's why clouds are very white. When you have a cloud and you have sunlight which hits the cloud, it's reflecting all the light of the sun, not all but a lot. Now it doesn't behave as a mirror because all the particles now pointing to different directions, but they still are particles of water, and they creating this very nice diffuse reflection because light is going to every possible direction. And now this is I find this an amazing example how to make your 3D scene to look really really awesome. Okay, and it's super cheap, super simple. I'm using this in every shot when I can stick dust or smoke and so on. So this is not the 3D scene. This is real footage, and that's example of fog, which is or mist. It's fog actually. It's low-lying cloud. Okay, and have a look how three-dimensional this area is. Okay, also have a look how much we have blue shadows. If I will have a look very far away here, opala, a different example. But again, let me jump backwards. Okay, blue shadows, whenever the sunlight is hitting, we have this cloud feeling, and then we have God rays here, which is quite cool. And the picture is painted with the negative spaces, which are in shadow, and then we have very good definition of depths. Now, a trick from compositing, you can use one layer of smoke, one. If you have one layer which is like slightly bigger than your or fog, slightly bigger than your comp lengths, you can use one to make this scene because it's basically you're starting to rotate it, you're starting to retime it slightly, scale it slightly. You don't need 5 billion elements. I just see myself spending a lot of time trying to find many elements, but then in the end, I find myself in many, many shots. Well, I just using the same element again and again and just rotating, mixing this again, and so on and so on and so on. So you don't need to go and reinvent additional, because when you bring different elements of smoke, you're falling into the problem that I mentioned previously. It's size and the speed of smoke. Okay, so if your two elements of smoke have different size and different structure, you can break your comp because you will see, well, this smoke doesn't behave right. But when you have only one, you can play with this quite a lot till you will break your script actually. So it's quite cheap and quite easy to kind of to comp stuff like mist and fog. This is another example of kind of usage of fog to depict certain element, to say, well, let's bring light to this element. This is a usual thing that you're doing in cinematography, that like the students usually will try when we say, well, we want to bring attention to certain element. They will, let's put light on this guy. No, what you can do, instead of putting light on these middle trees, you can put a little cloud behind them. And because they are dark, this cloud will bring these trees in front of everything. This is a very cool vignette kind of. You have dark vignette around, and then you have smoke, and then in the middle you have these five trees, and your eyes are just going there, and it's quite nice. Um, I will be soon over with examples. So this is another one which is a very beautiful example of proper combed clouds, and again it's picture, okay, but let's have a look what's happening here. It's a definitely sunset, sunrise, I don't know, but sun is very low. We're hitting our cloud, which is water, okay. From the right side, we have very colorized one area and very colorized another one. So as you can see, it's extremely reflective, and it is not something that people feel because we're just used to that, okay. So when you're creating your cloud from nothing or your smoke from nothing, always ask yourself, okay, how much light is scattered. So in this case, this cloud is huge. That's why the light which is starting coming inside, this is area of surface scattering here. You see the transition, okay, but in the end it's all dying, and what stays here, it's just a reflection of the sky, okay. And that creates very strong and very diverse picture, unlike what we usually will comp when we'll just put one smoke on top and then we'll say, well, that's done, okay, I'm kind of out of here, okay, I comped smoke, you wanted it, I have it, okay. On here on the far right, another good example of usage of clouds which are in shadow. Behind the clouds we see, it can be on front or behind, but let's assume this is behind the clouds. We can see very bright sky, okay. So somewhere there's a clouds which collecting light, and these guys are reacting as again backlit element, which again coming on front. So again, your cloud not always have to catch light, okay. So that's something that I'm using a lot, and I was showing this when we were comping, like in the workshop of how to comp lighting. I was quite fast with that, but basically, when you're trying to say in the night that there is lightning happening in the clouds, instead of just put lightning on top, you maybe want to bring dark cloud in front of this lightning. So you will say this lightning is behind, and then you backlight your cloud, okay. So that's will be kind of like good example on this right side, that you're not bringing light to the cloud, you're just making it dark, and that's how you're creating additional depths here, okay. And last example of clouds, again here, have a look how strong our kind of reflection from the bottom here, okay. So basically what's happening, the light is hitting the top of the clouds, it hits the ground, and then from the ground it's reflecting on the bottom. There's additional thing which is important to kind of to differentiate from the just reflection of the sky and the color of the cloud. So cloud is water. Water is has own diffuse qualities, okay. So water is slightly bluish, okay. It's not depending on the environment. It's basically water as an element has diffuse quality, that it's absorbs more different colors, and blue is more reflected. um, oh, just a second, let's read something from, oh man, the resolution of my screen here is so Doug, I cannot read it because I have very small monitor. I will let you add something in just when I will finish. So the cloud itself will have its own color, and that's why clouds which are kind of like ready to become a rain, they are way denser, they're way darker, okay. So another thing that we can see here, there's quite little cloud, but it's very dark, okay. Meaning this cloud is already starting to come together more and more because of the temperatures. For example, water started to connect to each other, the molecules, and then in the end it will be rain. But color of this cloud is darker than color of the other one, not because this is in the shadow, okay. Additional thing, Doug, what you wanted to say, if you can, because I remember you told me that you can't talk. Let's see, okay, let me, just a moment, I'm just bringing this, okay, to different screens, so we'll be able to read what's happening there. Just give me a second. Okay, so there's something from that interesting about the clouds propagated because they're comprised of water. Sometimes they will have very strongly forward scattering, which is a particle optical effect for many when the light is coming from behind. I'm sorry, just a second. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Doug, I will kind of, because I don't understand completely, guys, you can read what he's writing. So basically, sometimes clouds will have dark outline because we have very strong forward scattering of the light. Um, okay, you can send example. We can have a look into it. I think it's very interesting. I will keep going. Let's talk about dust. Okay, that's the last one, and then we'll go to comp. Okay, so basically, what is difference between dust and the and the clouds, basically, and vapor? Dust, basically, it's made out of really hard particles. Okay, that will be sand, which lifted in the air with a strong wind. That's something that you can probably see in if volcano eruption, or there is a like huge desert and a lot of wind, very hot air coming up, and then this beautifulness is coming to the towards the city or something. Okay, so what will physically means, what it physically means to us, it will not be, it will behave, I think, more like fog and less like smoke. So because these particles, again, they're not going to be attracted to each other, they're too big, and usually they will calm down quite fast if the weather will allow. So if it will be quite cold, they will just go down because there will be nothing which is pulling them up anymore. Okay, now dust, it's also kind of like very useful element in compositing. It's just basically you can like sing about Dune, sing about the Blade Runner, the last one. They used it huge amount of time, like, you know, all this kind of like very I had actually example, but then I erased that. Very three-dimensional scenes with a lot of dust in it. Okay.
Just
Yes.
type Las Vegas Blade Runner, yeah, on Google and you will find it.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So that was a really nice scenes when they used the dust. So I'm coming back to the really to the theoretical thing, and I just go through the stuff that I collected, which are important. Okay, so first, dust, smoke, it's all kind of like elements which will have their diffuse qualities. Okay, meaning they all made out of something. Okay, it's never plus, it's over. I'm saying it's never plus, never say never, but basically they're supposed to be always over and not plus to the environment, because all these elements, they somewhere in 3D space, and they're not affecting the actual environment that it which is behind them. Okay, so many times we will plus them, and that's something that we can do when we're comping very little amount of smoke, which is like atmospherics, just to rise blacks a little bit. This is fine, but always remember, from the moment you're plusing, you're faking. Okay, and it's also behaves not in physically correct way. Okay, you always want to over even very very little mist. Reflections, yes, they will reflect a lot of light, that's why we see them. Okay, stuff of density and transmission, the denser smoke is, the faster it will absorb the light, and then we'll have a lot of shadows. That's something we need to think about. Size, distance to camera, from the camera, we did touch it as well. So you need always to kind of think about how big the smoke, how fast the smoke is supposed to behave, and that's also one big deal. Like, you know, if you put smoke on very far away and you're trying to sell very big explosion and then smoke is going, you really want to be very very slow, because smoke is not very fast element usually. Okay, if there is like huge eruption, but even huge eruption on distance of 5 kilometer, smoke will behave very very slow because it's big. Okay, and we will see example, I think, for today. Shadowing, self-shadowing, shadow on environment, and the same spill of the color from environment and on environment. Okay, because it's reflective element, it's always will get some colors of environment, and this we will see today as well. Light diffusion, which is happening inside of it, and we are done with the basic things. Boom. Okay, good. So now we have few examples that first I think we have one I will let. So we had the basically I asked people to comp in company something inside of this thing, and Jan, do you want to share your screen? I actually, Jan, I can you can talk. I can share your script. We can see your element
Okay.
and talk
Good
about
morning.
this.
Perfect.
And I think that's the element.
Yeah. So what I tried with this one is like maybe not have a final result looking nice, but I wanted to show a technique that sometimes I use when I try to comp an element instead of getting a render from CG when I have to comp to the element. Um, so the idea is once you have the element working, like for example, you just plus it or merge it over to see that regarding to position is looking nice. You use the alpha of the element uh, to copy it with the background with a really high blur value. And that way you have the element with the luminance, the colors of the background. And after that, you use again the alpha of the element with a constant to have uh, like the color that you would like to use for the element. So is it what is what you're sharing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm showing. So basically, here they own color. So what Johan is talking about is we're getting here fog element, which looks somehow that's the fog element, and that's the alpha copy,
Mm-hmm.
and then pre-multiply, and then we have multiplication. Basically, that's how visible the element is. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the element. Okay, one, and
Yeah.
that's is the environment color. So this is our plate,
Yeah.
and then Yon is blurring the plate, and then you're using the alpha. Let me alpha of the fog second
Yeah.
alpha of the fog element with the blurred plate, and that's how we're getting basically the color of the smoke matching the color of the fog matching the color of the environment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So once you have that set up, you can play with your own color to give more, like, we could say, like power or whatever I mean, to add more shapes of
Mm-hmm.
the actual element of the smoke. And also, it's good to play when you do that with the alpha of each element, the environment color and the own shape color, because in the color lookup that you can use another nodes, whatever grading nodes, if you check the alpha,
Oh, yeah.
so here, if you contrast more or less your alpha channel, you will have more or less a different result. So
Yep. Then we will be more or less visible, basically.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can, like, for example, contrast areas where the smoke has some shapes, so you can see more of these shapes and less the dark areas, or the other way around.
Ah, yeah. So here you're trying to make to get rid of to make it more dense in the lower
Yeah,
part.
yeah, here it was to recover a bit these trails of the beginning, but the
Mm-hmm.
overall idea is like when I comp like a 2D element smoke, and it's not matching from the start. Lots of times I tried this, like, to make a key of the smoke
Yeah.
and to split it into two. So in one, I blur the background and I have the environment color.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other one, I put a constant so I can make the own color of the smoke, which has to be similar, obviously, to the one on the background. But
Yep.
on that way, I can tweak a bit to the element. And also another thing that I believe most of us, well, I mean, another thing that I find quite useful is this tiny blur on the background before comping the smoke. Here, maybe it's not too visible, but
Yeah.
usually it gives some kind of nice integration, because it helps to blur what is behind the smoke, which is what usually happens in a real image.
Yeah. Yeah, regarding blurring, so basically I think it's quite useful trick in general.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure how much background is blurred, so it's basically like uh, I think we can justify blurring like to make like if we're talking about physically correct thing, okay? There is a chance that if you have like let's think about the crystals in the air and light is coming through them, they're starting slightly to be reflected of each other till it's coming to camera, and that's how you're getting the diffusion. Okay, so that can be explanation for blaring. um, I somehow didn't use it much, but I do see it quite a lot, so it's a good trick to know. It gives you quite fast feeling that something is not okay there, not okay. I mean that there is something in the air. Okay, so when you're blaring, and it's also creates a feeling of density in the air. Okay, yeah. Well, thank you very much. I do have actually this example as example. So I would say that first of all, I think it's very because I always like to see if it's built in the way that you can expand. And I do like what you're doing here, that you're just comping this, and then you're comping on top the foreground without starting kind of like to invest kind of like to make kind of complicated stuff. So basically, we have background, we have the smoke, and we have the foreground, and that's something that I would like people to remember. Always keep it simple. Okay. Now let's talk about this picture. If you guys are able to play it from the rocket shot that I sent to you, what is the things that, because I would comment on that because we should learn from this. What feels slightly wrong in this picture?
I would personally feel like the stuff behind the smoke is a bit too high contrast
Mm-hmm.
for how dense the smoke is in some areas. I think I would pull out a little bit of contrast from the background.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
For example, I don't see many parallax from the foreground to the background.
Okay. I will answer both of them. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think first, Ruth. So basically, you're saying that it's not the background is not contrasty enough, and that's something that again, basically.
Is too contrasty is what I'm saying
Yeah, yeah.
from yeah.
Sorry. My bad. So it's too contrasty. I think it's basically it's reasonable to say, but saying that your background is not supposed to be affected by the smoke. So if we would plus it, it will behave slightly differently. But since we're overing, basically, that's what will happen actually in real life as well. But again, it's a point. It's artistic decision to do. Okay, but in real life, if you will over the smoke, that's what's happening. Okay, so that's how it would react most likely. Okay, there's one thing that I think we need to remember, which could be problem in this setup. I don't think you clumping your alpha, and when you're using color lookup, you can go to very crazy values, so you need to always pay attention that your alpha is not going above 1. The second one regarding parallax, there's two reasons why there will be no parallax. First, there's no parallax in this picture completely because it's a nodal pen. And second, if something is very, very far away and your camera makes very little movement, there will be no parallax because the distance there, like it's probably like a few kilometers away. So I think that's actually will be, that's the right kind of like result that's supposed to
Okay.
happen. What I wanted to mention here, I feel that the smoke is too fast, and that's telling me that, well, something is wrong. This is huge smoke, and it behaves very playful. It's very fast relatively to the distance, relatively to the size. So if you put your smoke far away, you want to slow it down all the time because otherwise there's supposed to be very strong wind to make this smoke to move in so playful way. Okay, that's something that it does look kind of like correct from what I kind of like feel. This smoke should not cast too much of the shadow on the ground. It's probably too defined, but it could happen. It's not very very sharp, but this line is maybe a little bit too defined, but somehow can happen. Maybe you remember Arrival with this smoke which is coming and its real effect, which was very very cool. But think also about the speed of this smoke in Arrival. It's slow.
Yeah.
It's beautiful and slow. Okay. So, but anyway, thank you very much for this example. I will jump to the next one, and that's coming from other side of the world. Aitor, are you with us? Okay, then I will explain. So basically, we have a 3D scene and we have 3D card in the 3D space, and that's a kind of like just a trick to make this card three-dimensional. Okay, so we can basically connect if we have 3D scene. Okay, and if we don't have 3D scene, we can create it for ourselves if needed. Okay, and this is the card. We can connect them, both of them in deep, instead of like basically not instead of, but basically connecting them in deep. And then you and I don't know if you with us. I did simplify your example because I want to be very basic here. So
Yeah,
basically, every
he's, he cannot use the mic because he's in a dailies.
cool. Okay. So what you can create, it's simple deep expression node, and I'm sure you all will have in your facility something like that already as a gizmo. But how does it work? So basically, every deep will have deep front and deep back, and usually it's one with the card, so it will be the same value. But then you can say, well, I want to take deep front here, deep back, nothing changed. But then you say, I will just move deep front minus and deep back plus one, and sorry, now I will enable this, and that's you getting the smoke which is positioned inside of your 3D scene. Okay, sometimes, many times, you're not going to have the 3D scene, you're going to have a building, but then you can, if you have camera move, you can build some cubes, and then it will be easy for you to position your smokes that will kind of like engulf the elements. I guess that's simple example. You guys understanding that, right? Okay, cool. Then we still have 18 minutes. Um, some additional stuff from your side.
Can we check this example on the folder of the renders of the script? I mean,
Which example?
the one from ITER. Is it on the?
No, I did just received it like just before workshop. I will give it to you, but it's really it's deep expression.
Yeah, it's
You can basically what we have from ITER is this guy, which is slightly more complicated just because of the additional kind of stuff involved there, which is basically the you have controller from here, but I didn't want to make it a little bit. I wanted to leave it more simple as an example. I will put it there, and you will be able to reach it. All right. Okay. Good. Now your time to take apart my comp. Okay. Tick, check, and I think this guy. No, that's this guy. Okay, so I did put few elements. Again, this is not the final comp, I'm so sorry. But basically we can talk about that, and we can talk about the things which are working, which not working. And we can talk about things that I was trying to pay attention to. Okay, and there's definitely things which are not working and which should be refined. But let me first present what I tried to achieve. Okay, so I tried to create a little bit smoky scene, so there will be like quite some fog on the background, then there will be edge of the fog, and then there will be some explosion. Okay, now based on the stuff that kind of the usual theoretical things that we were talking about, there's a few things that are happening in this. So first of all, the far smoke or fog is kind of like I separated the far background, this building and this building, so we have like a little bit more fog here, a little bit less here, and almost no fog here. I will arrive to script later, and you can kind of like start criticize stuff. But I will just first explain what was done in this comp to achieve this result. Then we have this explosion. Okay, this explosion I will show the element. Okay, in explosion I did colorize the bright part with a quite strong sunlight that will correspond to the edge of the fog, which is on the top, and the lower part is graded to match the blacks of the building, so they will correspond as well. And then we need to connect this explosion to the foreground element, so it will be not very cut out. So there's few things which are happening. Okay, so first of all, when explosion is coming out, it will cast the shadow on the ground. Second, because we have a fire, it will reflect on the ground. Next one, we have a very reflected element here, which basically is supposed to reflect explosion which is coming up, and that's something that we're adding. Then we can see that this on the far away smoke starting to react onto the explosion, and also the foreground smoke a little bit too late, a little bit too slow, but this smoke kind of like hit still by the sunlight, and we're creating the depths that we have in other kind of like fog scenes, that we have cold shadow, we have quite warm sunlight hit. What else? Then we have a shadow on the building, because this smoke starting to occlude the dome light from the sky. So building is becoming slightly darker, a little bit. And of course, because of the angle, we're supposed to see the reflection of the smoke in the house. Okay, so that's the first version of the all element in place to try to sell the shot. Okay, as you can see, there's not much which is related to the smoke itself, but it's more related to compositing of element inside of the scene, when you need to consider quite some kind of like, we basically need to consider what's happening to the scene when you're putting an element inside, how the scene will react. Okay, so again, you can open it on the server, and we can start to talk about, well, what is not working, because definitely stuff are not working. There's some things which we say, well, that's not exactly what I would expect. And before I will go inside of the script, I would like to just talk about this. And guys, shoot.
For me, the most foreground buildings are too occluded by the depth, so it feels like the buildings and the far on the other side of the river is basically the same, so I would give it more depth.
Yeah.
The smoke should occlude the reflective elements which are standing beside it. So there are these mirrors or whatever they are, which are pretty reflective. So this should go down while it goes up. Then this, I can't really see the element which is behind the big explosion smoke, which then gets distorted to the right and moved to the right. It's a bit, it's quite hard to read here what this is supposed to be, because it feels like a big layer of cloud in the air, and then it's suddenly moving. So this is a bit weird. It's like behaving like there is something, but the scale is too big somehow. So it's hard to know what it is.
Yeah.
I would say maybe the intensity of the sun and the smoke is a tad too high compared to what is coming on the building itself, and then just it feels a bit too warmish so that it feels more like a sand explosion. I mean, if it's supposed to be a sand explosion, I think it's fine. But I think just how much blue goes in and how much warmness is in the shadow feels more like a sand explosion. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. More comments?
Maybe me, just a few things.
Shoot.
The scale, the speed, and the haze.
Yep.
So basically, considering the haze that we have in the background, I would make it a bit more merged into the blue of what we have with less details.
Yep.
Then the explosion, considering the fact that it's reaching the top edge of the frame so fast,
yeah,
I think it's a bit out of scale.
Yeah.
Meaning that I would make it slower. I mean, this is like a huge explosion. It's very far, and it's covering the whole frame in a second. And yeah, so maybe I would make it a bit slower, considering that we have the element and not a CG explosion, so we cannot change the dynamic of the explosion. So yeah, I feel a little bit like it's a bit out of scale.
Yeah.
For the speed and the size.
Yeah.
And yeah, after that you can move on with other notes.
Okay, Tony.
Hi.
Hey.
First of all, thanks for the presentation. I really liked looking at all the smoke elements.
Welcome.
I kind of want to. I don't want to give notes on your thing. I think it looks beautiful. I think it's amazing. I've seen some volcano explosions, and sometimes they go pretty quick. I would say maybe it's just a tad bit warm, but it's pretty much. I also am looking at a phone, so so I can't
Yeah,
really see
of
the
course. On the
full
phone,
aspect.
everything looks
Um,
amazing.
on my cell phone in the 20 pixels, it looks great. The
Yeah.
question I have,
Yeah.
maybe we have like 10 minutes. I'm not sure if we can answer it or not. Is I always come with the same kind of issue when I have a 2D element, which is I pull a Luma key. It's like the creme de la creme of Luma keys. It's like amazing.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
But of course, depending on, as you said, depending on the density of the smoke, you at some point you need to clamp it. Let's say it's very thick smoke, so
Yeah.
you need to clamp it. So
Yeah.
let's say you decide that 0.8
Yeah.
is your point, and then the middle of the smoke, for example, is completely opaque, and then of course you get the note, the smoke is too opaque. Please, like, make it less visible.
Yeah.
And then I feel like my comp falls apart because then I just put an opacity, and then all the beautiful Luma key that I've done, it's destroyed because it looks like I just made everything invisible.
Yeah.
And I've been working on kind of a solution to this. I think but it's been only in the recent like year or so, which is basically to try to store values above 1 and clamp it at the end, so that if I have to lower the opacity, you lower the alpha so that it tapers off, so that you still restore some of that luminance. I'm not sure if that makes any sense. It's basically the difference between everything just going opacity 0.5 at once
Yeah.
versus like you're lowering the alpha, but you still somehow have this above 1 detail, similar to if you had a smoke element from CG where the values might be above 1. Of course, you can't over something above 1, but the
Yeah.
point is that you still have all these
Yeah.
details within the smoke.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've encountered anything like this before, but it's a constant problem that I have.
I'm solving it slightly differently. But yeah, that's the usual problem when we're trying to go a little bit more transparent. And I will touch this in a moment. So let me jump to script now, because I really wanted to collect comments from you. And let's just run through the script and try to fix everything, okay? Or try to fix few things that I think that we should, or we, that's why I wanted to. So far element depths. So first of all, we have comment of Igor. So let's have a look how script is built. And it's, again, guys, that's essential. Keep it simple. Far background. On top of far background, you have far fog. And this is our far fog. On top of far fog, I put the building. Okay, fine. So we can see that far fog is actually completely out of the building, completely out of the, and then we have another far fog on top of the building itself. And that's basically, I'm just taking the far fog element. I probably transform it slightly. You remember I told you, guys, you can reuse it. So it will not feels like fog starting to be transparent because the details are different now. I have my tracking, fine. And then I'm masking this with the far mask that was provided. And now we kind of like putting the building again inside of the smoke. And as basically Igor mentioned, well, let's bring it up front a little bit, okay? So I think we just need to the reduce of the amount here. Okay, command addressed. Let's keep going. And then we have a fog on top. And we've got command that this fog is slightly too, I think, prominent. I think, and there is no transition between this guy and the haze. And I think that was from Yuri. And I agree. But now I'm trying to address comment from Tony as well, okay? How you preventing your element to be too opaque. So yes, you need to kind of go down with the opacity, and I'll show you how I'm usually, not usually, but basically when I'm lazy, I will comp that like that. You see here, there will be no self-shadowing when I'm extracting alpha. That's it, this is my alpha. And what I will do here, I'll just kill the color with it going with the gain to 0, and then I will define the color of this cloud. And then you see that, let's go after pre-multiplication so we'll see what we're doing. And then I have a certain area that I said, well, this area will be, slightly brighter, I guess. And that's how I'm usually defining different areas of color. So we have sunlight, we have no sunlight. We'll go to more complicated areas, like let's go here. For example, this is another part of the smoke that I said, well, here we are very bright on the top, and then we're going a little bit bluish. Now, as you can see, there's not two of them. There is like many, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and even 5. And that's how I'm trying to solve problem of smoke when it's supposed to go a little bit not very opaque, but still with a lot of details. Basically, you can take few smokes and then you overing one of the top of each other, and in the end you're getting somewhere something which has different brightnesses, different, and because they overed, slowly they will accumulate to one smoke which is behaving coherent if these elements are matching each other. Okay, so I would recommend not to use one, or if you're using one, which maybe I'm reusing, for example, this one I'm using few times, I'm just time offsetting this, but then you layering them one on top of each other till you achieve the result of self-shadowing. So here I'm trying to fake sunlight and then shadow, okay, in the bottom. You're going one, another, so you slowly, and then you pre-render these guys, and then you're getting something that will behave in controllable way here. Now, I could address here now comment of separation of this top area and the lower one just by working in this area, but we don't have time. I will have to move on. Another comment, mirror elements are too bright. Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to address it right now. It's this one, I guess, here. Yeah, I just kind of like, well, I was thinking to break the wall, but then I was like, okay, that's too much of an effort. But I agree, the elements which are behind the explosion, we definitely, that's the usual problem. Definitely, they probably will be more covered, but because they see very overexposed, one of the ways to solve that, and that's tip for compositing of explosions, smoke, you can comp it in log, and it will be way denser. Okay, so you're going to log, and let's just have a look on the example here. Okay, so this is and then I will bring just the color space nodes, and let's see, maybe it all will all will collapse now. Okay, now I just went to Alexa log C here. I unpre-multiplied and pre-multiplied the A, and then I went back. Let's have a look and we'll solve the problems of something. Okay, the opposite, it's kind of like made that's right, my background is darker. Let's go and try to kind of like to brighten the background behind and see how it will react. So basically, you can see that your fog is way denser right now. It feels like quite strong. It's general kind of thing you need to remember about the comping in log space when you're dealing with the semi-transparent areas. Sun a little bit high on the smoke. Smoke is too warm, and well, easy peasy. So let's have a look how we build it later. So you see it's all background. Now I have additional smoke on very much foreground, which I think if we go into the front, we can see that it's just on top of everything. Okay, I think it shouldn't be on top of everything, but it is. And I think that's one that's, no, it's just on the top of all the background before foreground is coming in. So I can just lower this guy as well, because this kind of like attributes a lot of the smoke in generally on top. So let's just lower it. I will go to the point very soon. Now, there is one thing actually I want to mention about the scale. I think, guys, that it's right that you see that scale is of an explosion, but you should not slow it down. You should scale it up, because this explosion is way bigger than it was shot. It is way bigger. Look at this. This explosion now in our scene is 5 meters tall currently. In real life, it's way bigger. It was shot far away. That's why it's slow. You did spot right thing. The explosion is incorrect, but it's not too fast. It is too slow. For this distance, this explosion is supposed to jump very fast and very far. It's supposed to be bigger as well, so I should scale it so it will exit the frame faster. So the spot on the speed is correct, but it's opposite. It's supposed to be faster and not slower. So additional comments about the smoke being too warm, I agree, and that's things that we can easily address when we comping in organized way. Again, that's something that I'm always trying to bring you. So that was my background, and then we have another branch which is just for foreground, and I can have a look on the branch here, which again I did split to different elements. And let's go, we don't have time, but whoever have to go, please go to your duties. But let's have a look on the elements that we have here. So we have a very far kind of like wall, and this wall already receiving, it's like wall and the floor, it's already receiving the shadow. I will share the script with inside of company. So this will be our reflection, I guess. This will be our shadow, and then reflection multiplied on top. But again, as you can see, I don't care about the foreground because I know this is my background element, and that's the beauty of comping in the layers. Ciao, Ivan. And then, you're not with us. Okay, then we have another element going on top, which is explosion, and we can do with this explosion whatever we want. We don't care about any edges. Then we have another element, which is front fog, which is in front of explosion. Then we have another element, which is a wall, and wall has two things which are happening on this wall. Is reflection of the glass in the glass, which is happening there, and we have a shadow, and then we're extruding the edges. But then again, it's one element which can be pre-rendered, it's going on top. And the last one, of course, is the foreground element, which is coming on top of everything, and then we're just overing, and that's it. Okay, very simple. Keep your comps simple, and in this case, all comments that you will get, you will say to the supervisor, well, no worries, give me half an hour, instead of like, well, dude, it's so complicated, you have no idea, that's all in there. Okay, right now in this comp you can pre-render every single part without affecting others. Okay, so that's something that is extremely important, kind of like for me to, so that you will understand it's kind of how to build your scripts in the efficient way. And thank you very much. I'm running a little bit too late. Thank you for joining. Next workshop we will talk about compositing of water, and again, please bring your examples if you would like to, like little ones, as what Johan did. I think it's great to have something like that. I will also share it that other people will be able to learn from. It takes like 1, 2, 3 hours to create one, and I think it's worth it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.